Hello guys, UnoPro here, back for another commentary for the latest week of Team Wars. Once again doing Team Memestorm. This is admittedly because I am on the team, versus Teamwork. Now I'm going to be, doing one of these videos at least once every week, one for Memestorm. And if any other teams want their games to be casted, I'm very happy to do it. I'm looking for as much experience as possible. Just going to go over a quick rundown of the tournament breakdown. Basically, each team will have 6 players and 6 decks, one from each faction. Now, I do have the default generals on screen, but you can't have any other general from each faction. So that might be a little bit misleading, but just keep that in mind, and I will probably get that fixed next week, hopefully. So each team needs to get 1 win with every single faction. So it's essentially a best of 11. Once the deck wins, obviously, it's already got that win for that faction, it won't see it again. Another rule is that if a player does lose 2 games in a row, they can't then play the consecutive game. So what that means is, if you 2-0 somebody, then that next game you can't face that deck. So if one of your deck is really hard countered by this deck, you probably won't see it. You might want to play at that time, and you won't see that faction. Anyway, so let's get into game. Our first game will be Zuch's Songhai versus Auron's Songhai. Okay, so we only have this one from Auron's perspective. That is because Zuch has run out his very players out of his match history. Nothing we can do about that. So first thing we see is a couple interesting choices for this Reaver deck, and that is Adjudicator. Adjudicator is a new card that's just come out and lowers the cost of all spells in your action bar by 1. Now, strictly speaking, this card tends to not result in a net mana gain. You have to be getting at least 3 spells with it, and in Songhai, you got a lot of 0 mana spells, as we can see, that aren't really going to help with that. So the chance of you actually, getting 3 mana at least reduction with it are pretty low. What it does allow for is it allows you to basically store some mana away, and allow for really powerful swing turns with your more spell-based cards. So it's not about playing 3 mana to get 4 mana. It's about storing 3 mana in some spells later, and then having a really powerful swing turn with those spell-based effects. We do see the missed turn 1 play, and then the follow-up Land Fox with Zuch, so definitely not a great start here. However, a couple 3 mana cards in hand do open up some options. Now the Land Fox does come down, Inner Focus, and it looks like we're going to see the Inner Focus to probably kill the Land Fox, and then Mana Vortex Phoenix Fire, using a lot of resources. Now, because Zuch, that was his only card he could play, he's only actually getting 1 Phoenix Fire out of that. But we do see a use of a card from Auron. Now I will get that that Mana Vortex will replace itself, but still using Inner Focus and that kind of thing. But to deal with this, it will go back up to 6 cards. Now, not a lot else going on in the hand. We will see an Adjudicator come down, pretty likely, but not a lot of high impact spells, and having these cheap spells isn't really going to help unless you have something to benefit from them. Okay, so also Zuch will kill that off. So both players getting 2 Phoenix Fires out of their Land Fox is a pretty good result. You can't really ask for a lot more than that. Well, actually, sorry, I apologize. Zuch only gets 1 because he was at 5 cards to begin with. So we will see, hopefully for Zuch's, another 3-drop, maybe a 2-drop. He is probably running a pretty spell-based deck. That's what he tends to run. Okay, so we will see the Elkin Lawmaster comes out. We can see our last spell was a Phoenix Fire. A pretty good card in this matchup, deals with a lot of Songhai's minions, and it was also really good at racing. Okay, so yeah, I do agree with replacing that Adjudicator. Not really a lot of need for a second one. And the board presence is, definitely in the favour of Zuch's, but we do see a pretty nice clear. We see Adjudicator, Phoenix Fire, and hitting the 3-1. And definitely not too bad. The thing is, though, the Bloodborne spell is available, so if you can chuck in a Mana Vortex, you can actually play all of them, which would involve going back to here and then playing it, the Heartseeker safe there, or choosing not to kill the 3-1, at least not with his general. Interesting decision here, going for an Inner Focus on it. Now I'm not sure about that. You're basically trading an Inner Focus for a Mana Vortex, which you're going to use anyway. So basically just choosing to save that Mana Vortex instead of an Inner Focus, which I don't really agree with. I think Inner Focus is a much higher impact card. Mana Vortex replaces itself, This way you do deny the mana tile, which definitely can be relevant. We're getting to the turn where Zooches want to go off with some big spell combos, but I think all in all, I think having that inner focus is probably just a little bit better. So we will see Zooches now also has his Blood Bond spell ability. Not as proactive as the Reaver one, but definitely can be very good and allows you to play your minions really safe and then suddenly get them into action. It can also be used to get to those Heart Seekers that we see. So the Reaver hero power already getting value out of the Phoenix Fire. So due to the 4 Winds Magi coming down. Now, Oran does have an answer to this, but it's slightly awkward with the Onyx Bear Seal. I do imagine that will come out. This is a very, very high priority minion that really needs to be killed as fast as possible. Interesting, choosing to ignore it, going for a Heaven's Eclipse. Now, I believe, the reasoning behind this is, well, sure, I'll take some extra damage. The healing effect isn't going to be too relevant this turn. And maybe you can even get him to waste a couple of spells and then try and stabilize the turn after. I'm not too sure how I agree with that. I don't believe we saw the replace first. I would have probably preferred to replace beforehand and then see if you can get a 2-drop. Maybe if you get a 2-drop, then you can Onyx Bear Seal and then do it. Definitely quite a few options there. But choosing to go for the greedier play. So you will see Zooches attacking. He wants to get full value out of that heal. And even going with the 4 Winds Magi, definitely not afraid to deal damage. With those Blood Winds Magi and the Mask, definitely a ton of damage potential here. That's a Phoenix Fire that we didn't know about. One more Phoenix Fire will be lethal out of nowhere. Well, it does, and he does have it. So they're one from the Landfox and then one from hand, I believe. A very, very strong burst combo from Zooch. Just the power of that 4 Winds Magi, and Oren's got to be regretting not using that Onyx Bear Seal when he could. Okay, so we will update the scoreboard. A very, very nice win for Memestorm here with Zooches. I think that was 20 plus burst out of hand. Well, with the 4 Winds Magi, I should say. That obviously adds a lot of burst. But very, very strong start. And I don't necessarily fault Oren for doing that play, even though it eventually caused him to lose the game. Sometimes you just have to go for the win. And I think that's what was done. Okay, we will see. But yeah, definitely showing just how dangerous 4 Winds Magi can be. Okay, so our next game is a little bit interesting. It is actually myself playing as a Lioner. So it's going to be a little bit weird commentating myself, but I'll maybe focus more on trying to explain my own players, explain my reasoning, rather than just pretending it's not me, because obviously that makes a bit of a difference. Fortunately, Oren was added to my friends list, so I can see his perspective of the game. Just quickly get that up. Alright, so we're ready to go. I'm playing Lioner. Tend to get rid of Divine Bond just because I don't want any situational cards in my hand early on. I just want a clear curve, and especially with this kind of hand, it's very unreliable. Have a minion, and it's already a pretty good position if we do. Okay, so fortunate just to have a turn 1 play here, and I remember I thought about it for a little bit here, what I wanted to replace, and I think I did end up replacing the Holy Immolation. Now my reasoning there is that in the early game, Lioner is all about having a minion on board. We already get rewarded pretty hard. All I want to do is focus on getting a minion to stick. I don't really need spells that will benefit off that. Now obviously Holy Immolation does have a comeback mechanism in it, but I still just wanted to have very solid early threats. So we do get the Primus Fist, definitely going to be playing that. Not the strongest turn 2 looking, but we do have the option of potentially going into an Arclight Regalia. We have that Saber Spine, lots of different options here. Okay, so we did see that the Oren is running, quite a few 3-drops, running the Jade Monk, the Adjudicator, definitely a couple of interesting choices. So we do see the Jade Monk come out, and definitely not a very clear turn here. Repulsive Beast isn't a great card against Songhai. If they run Mist Dragon Seal, it basically does nothing. So I do decide that, I'm not really ever going to feel comfortable using that card, unless it's just to clear off a minion. Okay, so that Dialysis definitely changes a few options. It basically gives me the decision: do I Saber Spine Tiger and not develop my own board? Do I play Dialysis on a mana tile? Do I play it Runaway? Or do I even go for an Arclight Regalia? Now, Arclight Regalia doesn't seem too good here, just because I'll be taking one charge away just by killing the Jade Monk, and then a Phoenix Fire plus a general attack basically removes it for less mana than I even spent on it. So that was basically decided against that pretty early. I think I did decide to play the Dialysis. I really want to be proactive. And I know that, sure, I can take 4 damage now, but in the long run, it's going to create a stronger board. I have that Divine Bond in hand. Unless he has an Onyx Bear Seal, it's very hard for him to deal with it. Now, just denying that middle mana tile, instead of going up to the top one, I definitely want to deny one of the mana tiles, stop him getting both. And then, this way, if he wants to walk onto 5 mana, he has to deal with his minion, which he's no longer attacking with. So, pretty good for me. Now in Oren's hand, we don't see a lot going on. We do see a Phoenix Fire, which can kill the first half of Dialysis, but not really doing a lot. There's potential to, Phoenix Fire it, potentially walk down depending on the spawn, but it needs to be one of these 3 in order to kill the Primus Fist. And that, Saber Spine Seal isn't doing a ton. There is the option to Saber Spine and a trade, or Phoenix Fire and trade, and then chip away at the 0-10. Definitely an option, but definitely not a very strong hand. It can ramp onto 5 mana, which can be decent, but not dealing with that Dialysis makes that Fire Starter a little bit weaker. So we will see what he chooses to do. Definitely a tricky decision. There is potential with Fire Starter plus Inner Focus, get those 1/1s, help you trade and clear the board a bit more. But that's what makes Dialysis so strong in liner, is that, 5 attack is quite a good amount of health. I mean, quite a good amount of attack, sorry. And you don't want to just leave a 5 attack minion around, but suddenly you play something to kill it, and then you have a 0-10, which liner can buff very, very quickly. So we do see he chooses just to clear the first half and leave me with a 0-4. I do like this play a decent amount, but I do have the hand to punish it. So Holy Immolation will allow me to clear the board, and I can even walk onto the mana tile and give it 1 attack. I did think about, once again, just about Regalia, something like that. Even there is potential just to walk up to the mana tile, move this onto the mana tile, buff this with my hero trait and play Regalia. I decided, that this Tombstone is actually a really valuable body. It can get back up to 10 health with the Divine Bond in hand. I want to play what gives me the best board presence. I don't really need to develop the Regalia anytime soon. I'm happy to keep dropping big minions. Decided I don't really want to attack with the Primus Fist. I've already got enough, damage on him that I'm comfortable. I don't really feel like I need to race him, and I just want to clear all of his board, make it harder for him to effectively use that Bloodborne spell. Definitely a very strong position. So once again, we see a bit of an awkward turn. Only able to use 5 mana. Does go for the Inner Focus, but gets a very unfortunate spawn, meaning that he can't clear off this Tombstone. That was basically the only one, so I did get very fortunate there. Even if it does happen, it's 3 health. With a Primus Fist on board, I will be able to deal with that, just on board. But definitely fortunate from my perspective to have that spawn. Now I do have an on-board clear, which is attacking the Tombstone in, hitting with the General, and then clearing the 1/1, which will leave me with 22 health and a 2/1 on board, plus 5 mana to spend on whatever. I am playing liner. I realize, I'm at 5 mana. I make this great liner play where I play Ironcliff Guardian onto an empty board, looking pretty good. Now, when you're playing something like Ironcliff Guardian, there can be a lot to think about, even on an empty board. My main thing that I tend to think about is either keeping them close to me if it gets dispelled, or making it harder for them to run away when it's dispelled, or playing against Onyx Bear Seal, which can be a very effective body at blocking when versing Songhai players. And I also have a bit of think about here of where I want to attack with my Primus Fist. This is a tournament. I'm trying to think quite intensely about every decision I can. I don't want to let the team down. So basically there's 3 options. I can stay in range here, or I can move to one of these. I decided I like to a little bit more central, and the reason is I'm going to play the Ironcliff Guardian here. Now what this means is that if he Onyx best heals, now his general can't come through and attack this, which is, you know, definitely strong. I want to protect my minions a lot. I played the Ironclad Guardian here. Sure, if he dispels it and runs away, that's fine, but if he dispels, I'm basically going to win anyway. So Onyx best heal is the card he needs, so it's the card I play around, even if it's just a little bit. So we do see a desperation play, Jade Monk coming down with the Death Strike seal. Basically, you know, no hope there, and we do see that you have to use that inner focus, no longer using with that Heartseeker, and a pretty easy lethal with Divine Bond. So able to stop that early aggression, clear the board, a bit of a clunky hand from Spell High, and we saw, you know, what the main problem with Spell High is, that sometimes it draws too many spells, sometimes it draws too many minions. It really needs to draw that right mix in order to be really effective. So that will be a 2-0 start to mean start. And, you know, Songhai is definitely one of the weaker factions, but you never really want to go 2-0 with any deck. So I will just load up the next game here. Okay, so another thing to talk about is that, as I was saying earlier, after the 0-2 from Songhai, it basically means Songhai can't play the next game. So, you know, as a team, you can decide, you know, what deck is worst against Songhai. What deck do we really not want to versus Songhai? I think there's, you know, a couple of choices you should go with, but it does look like Memestorm went with Magma. So Magma not the best against Songhai, just because it has a bit of a weak early game at times. You know, it doesn't deal well with ranged threats, which Songhai, especially a Reaver deck, is very, very good at creating. So I think that's a pretty nice choice. The only other choice that pops out to me is probably Vaynar, but depending on the type of Vaynar, it's not as much of a problem as it used to be. Especially now, they're seeing a lot less burst. It used to be, you know, one of the biggest counters to Vaynar was Songhai, nearly unwinnable at times. Okay, just getting in, nearly loaded up. I do apologize for the delay. Unfortunately, this is the only way we can do it, but you got to make do. Okay, so looking at the matchups, it will be a Magma versus Magma, a mirror matchup. And let me just load that up. And we are ready to go for game 3. Okay, so we do see Grinch is playing a mech deck, not choosing to use that Starhorn, choosing Varth instead. And we can already see it's a little bit less aggressive than some builds, choosing to run a Chasers of Mechazor. Not like we see in the more aggressive builds at times. It's not really that aggressive of a creature, but it does allow a little bit more late game potential. So we'll just pause there, let the other replay catch up. It's being a little bit slow, unfortunately. Alright, we are back into the action. So we see from Streamy that he is running possibly a control Magma. We do see Earth Spheres, Dialysis, and no mechs. So definitely probably a more controlling. And Magma doesn't have a ton of cheap answers to Mechazor. It does have Metamorphosis, but that's 6 mana, and you also need an activator for it. So unless you save a Blood Tier for it, it can be quite hard to clear, you know, before or at any point in the game. And even then, it's still at 7 mana. So we do see a pretty nice start with Grinch, choosing to play the Blood Tier Alchemist. He wants to take advantage of those mana tiles as much as he can. Very, very important here that he wants to ramp in that 4 mana. The rest of the hand isn't too exciting, but playing that Blood Tier means he can go to Chasers of Mechazor next turn. We do see the potential Blood Tier, which could clear that other Blood Tier, and it looks pretty good here. It does have the mana to do both, choosing to deny the mana tile even. Potentially, I don't mind it. It's, you know, Mechazor decks definitely want to get it out as early as they can, and this is going to basically limit it to 4 mana instead of 5 mana, which is definitely very relevant. I definitely like that play. There is potential to try and play for value, play that Blood Tier really safe, but that also means that, you know, you're putting your general in a not the best spot. It's not going towards the mana tile, and it's not going towards the center. I think this is definitely a very fine play. So Grinch left just with the 1 mana to play. He does have a Helm of Mechazor, but not a lot else going on. No way to clear that young Siltha, lacking any sort of ping to finish off the egg. Definitely a bit of an awkward turn for Grinch here. Interesting choice he's looking at playing it there. What that does tell me is he's probably planning on moving to the center, because otherwise, if he goes here, then the young Silthar can kill it for free. Maybe he doesn't think that's a problem. Okay, so it looks like he's going to trade in and then take that center. I quite like that. Having the center is always very, very strong. And that 1-2 body wasn't really going to do anything else apart from basically just die. So definitely a fine play. Threatening to ramp on to 5 mana next turn, though he doesn't really need to because now he has 4 mana plays. We do see the potential Dialytus come out from streaming. I imagine that's basically going to be the play no matter what. Probably going to choose to deny the mana tile, I would imagine. Once again, I imagine streaming just wants to deny Mechazor as much as possible. Does get a Blood Tear, which he can also play. I don't imagine he'll want to play that. We don't know if he's running Metamorphosis. If he is, he really needs to save that Blood Tear to combo with Metamorphosis. If he's able to stay at high health, then he can go with this plan that we see in a lot of mech games, where you basically just survive, you stop the early aggression, and then you deal with Mechazor. And then you basically just win because, mech decks aren't that great in late game. Now, obviously, there might be a little bit more late game in Grinch's deck, but we would imagine that a more standard control Magma or mid-range Magma should be able to win once Mechazor is dealt with. So if he does choose to attack with a young Silthar, it will die. I don't think he will. I don't think you want to make either of these attacks, just because you're the controlling deck. You want to be just controlling the board as much as you can. Getting that 2 face damage isn't really going to be your help you win the game. Your win condition is not rushing down your opponent. So I definitely like that play, making sure to save the Blood Tear for an eventual Metamorphosis draw, because otherwise there's no real way to deal with it. Okay, so we do see the Egg Morph come out on the Dialytus. Grinch only at 40%. So potential to play around Egg Morph there, but I don't think you really want to. It could just be dodged very easily if you do play around it. And it's a mech deck. They're an aggressive deck, no matter how you really build it. You want to be, just playing your threats out. They're responding to you 4 mana with a 4 mana removal spell. That's completely fine. Grinch choosing not to attack with the general, something he probably wants to do in general versus matchup, but just seeing that he's behind on board, probably decides that it's best not to. Could have potentially tried to protect 2-2, clearing the egg with the general, but I don't think he's expecting to get a ton of value out of 2-2 no matter how he plays it. So we will see another very nice play for Streamy. Veteran Silthar, Blood Ball spell, playing on curve, developing these 2 really sticky minions, ready to start attacking in. He's ahead on the board. We do see a eventual Mercantor for Grinch, but that's a long way to come back onto the board, and only at 20% Mechazor progress. He can get to 40%. Sorry, he can get to 80, but that's going to take at least 2 turns, and no Vindicator in sight to rush it out. Definitely a very, very slow hand from the Mechazor player. And we do see that Metamorphosis is in hand. Unfortunately for Streamy, no Blood Tear anymore. He did choose to replace that, I believe, but still an answer, still delays for at least a turn, and he can probably find an answer soon enough. So I think Streamy has decided he's at a point where he doesn't need to just destroy Mechazor and then eventually win. He can actually start pushing his own agenda. We do see the chasers of Mechazor. I love this positioning, very, very strong positioning. It shows that Grinch is a very, very strong player, completely playing around Mercantor Warbeast. And now, if he wants to play it, he has to just run into the general. Very, very important. So we do see a couple options. Dialytus doesn't seem very good. It's a little bit off curve. I think maybe just trading in the Mercantor Warbeast with the 5/4 is perfectly fine. Metamorphosis is possible, but you do want to save that for Mechazor in case you can't close out the game soon. And it does make it hard to be aggressive when you're versing that Vast Bloodborne spell. It will potentially get to 4 attacks, so it's harder to close out the game. I think you do probably just send in the Mercantor, get the free, get the free trade. You're not really gonna be doing anything else anyway. You may choose just to ignore it, trade it in with Veteran Silthar and play the Dialytus. That's definitely the greedier play. Leaving the egg on the Veteran Silthar can be annoying with Mercantors coming out, but if he moves it back, it should be fine. We'll see what Streamy decides to do. If he does choose to walk backwards and then play, Dialytus, so it looks like he will go for the trade. I would like to see him at least walk backwards 1 square. I mean, he can stay there, yeah. So he does choose that. making sure that his egg is not going to be allowed to help any frenzy combos. What we could possibly see, but I'm not sure it's overly strong, is just trading in a Mecantor. It doesn't really clear the board too much, but it is something. We do, however, see that there's a couple mechs drawn. Now we can play Chasers and Helm with Mechazor. We can get that Mechazor out, but no way to give it a rush. And an already pretty decent board presence could make this a little bit difficult for Grinch still. We do still see that Metamorphosis in hand. If it does go in the far corner, one of these far corners, there's nothing that can reach it. But even Metamorphosis just to delay a turn could be pretty strong here. Definitely a good, the best chance at Grinch to come back into the game. He decides he wants to attack. He knows the game is running away from him. He's getting outvalued by cards like Young Silver and Dilatus. He needs to try and finish the game soon. So a potential of how much damage do we have? It's 4 from Mecantor, 7 from the General, 12, 14, 15 damage. Definitely not the most. Definitely not the best play, but we could see the Mecantor to clear off these two. That would have let a hit from Mechazor, which could be pretty devastating. We could easily just see a trade into the minions, even maybe even an Earth Sphere. Definitely not a clear turn. He would really like that Blood to Alchemist, I imagine. Definitely a very difficult turn. I think maybe Metamorphosis might be the best play to trade in the board. You're going to be getting that 0-10 provoke, which is pretty decent, but it does mean that you no longer have a long-term answer to Mechazor. You're going to need at least 2 turns before you can get close enough to it, or if you want to draw another Blood Tier Metamorphosis, it's pretty unlikely that's going to happen. What I think it needs to happen potentially is just going face and trying to win the game. Metamorphosis definitely going to be pretty strong here, and it looks like it will be going for a tempo Metamorphosis, just making the 1/1s pretty irrelevant. A Tombstone will give a lot more protection. It's definitely pretty hard for Grinch to kill him this turn. He would need something like Mecantor plus the 1 mana 2/2 spell. I think it's Greater Fortitude it's called. That's basically one of the only lethals possible. You need those exact cards, exact mana, unless he's running some other rush minions. No, even that wouldn't be enough, so because the General is also provoked. So definitely a very nice play from Streamy, basically deciding there's no way he's going to die next turn, and it's very hard for his opponent to avoid lethal. We even see that Bounded Life Force in hand, and I think this will be the game for Streamy. I can't imagine any possible out. Very, very nice play from Streamy, deciding he doesn't need to deal with the threats. He can take his board advantage and just tempo out with a Metamorphosis. Basically ensures there's a turn of him not dying. The Tombstone just secures the fact that he can't die. Recognizes that and pushes for lethal, and he will get lethal this turn, I believe. Yeah, so Mecantor will just come in, clear the way for the General, and that will be a hit. Drawing 2 Mecantors, definitely very good in this matchup, definitely against Grinch's hand. Lines up so well against those Chasers and Mechazors. Grinch had to play quite awkwardly around Mecantor just because of how brutal it would have been. All these different plays. Doesn't really matter how Streamy does this at this point. So that will be the first win for Teamwork. As Streamy does come in, finishing off with the General very strong and moving the game score to 2-1. Alright, so it looks like we have a series on our hands. So that Magma does get a win. Able to stop the early aggression of Magma. Grinch didn't really get a lot going on early on. He didn't really draw those cheaper 3 mana mechs until a little bit later. Missed that. I think the real turn was when that Blood Tier Alchemist was killed by the other Blood Tier Alchemist. No longer the ability to ramp onto 4 mana. Playing just a Helm of Mechazor on turn 2 is a pretty weak play for a deck that really needs to get on the board early. So I will just get into the next game. Fortunately enough, we will be able to see both games. so now that Songhai is still becomes available once again. Do apologize for the delay, just loading in. Really nothing I can do from my side of things, unfortunately. Okay, so our next game will be Grinch versus Auron. Auron choosing to come back in with that Songhai after starting 0-2. So Grinch is choosing to play again, but choosing to switch to his Vitruvian now. So I think Mazilji was missing from the team. Memestorm, so Grinch is deciding to play Vet as well. Just loading in, and we are ready to go. Okay, so we can instantly see that Grinch is not playing an aggro vet, he's playing a commonly referred to as sabotaged vet. Definitely a lot more mid-rangey, looking to play a few more late game threats, and definitely on the more controlling side. So we do see the Reaver coming out once again. Definitely more of an aggro deck. Not the most aggressive Songhai ever, but definitely probably a better matchup for. Well, it's not always very clear. Sometimes, Songhai can beat aggro, but it's not the most reliable. It's not designed always to beat aggro. Sometimes it can be a little bit slow. It really depends on the early draws. During Latin Foxes can, sometimes just crush any aggro deck. So we do see a pretty nice start for Grinch. First with Solange Sojourner, a very strong 2/6 body. Very hard for Songhai to deal with. Definitely has to deal lots of separate instances of damages to deal with these high health minions, and that just means Sojourner can draw quite a lot of cards. So there is the option to develop the Adjudicator. I don't think we'll see that come out, only affecting 2 spells. Land Fox could come out and try and counter the Sojourner, generate value as well, or we could just see the Onyx Bear Seal. I think at this point in the game, denying the card draw isn't the most important thing. I think tempo is a little bit more important, so I do imagine that we will see the Land Fox come out. Unfortunately for Auron, he will be at 5 cards if he plays it, meaning that it'll only generate at max 1 Phoenix Fire. So not the most appealing play. A second Wish coming down onto the Sojourner would mean that it kills it for free and only generates 1 Phoenix Fire, leaving it at 6 health still. So definitely not an easy play here. I will be interested to see if he chooses to play Land Fox out of the range of Sojourner, which he could play by playing it on one of these squares here first and then walking up. Looking like he might want to use the mana tiles potentially. Okay, so going with that Onyx Bear Seal, I don't mind it. There are definitely better threats for Onyx Bear Seal, but it's hard to imagine a play where he doesn't fall behind on tempo if he doesn't. However, this means Grinch does have the tempo, he has that Bear Seal on board, and 4 mana to do whatever he pleases. Once again, Auron getting punished for not having a turn 1 play, not able to seize that tempo. Now, it may be a list problem. We haven't even... Have we even seen any 2-drops? I'm not quite sure we have seen any 2-drops. I'm sure he probably has 1 or 2, but definitely could be a weakness of the deck. Grinch feeling comfortable enough that he can already start hitting his opponent when in a matchup where normally he's the defensive player. So 2 minions on board versus none of Songhai. Definitely a worrying start. We don't see too much improvement in the hands of our Reaver player. Does have potential stuff with Latin Fox, Inner Focus, Saber Spine Seal that could clear off the Primus Shieldmaster, generate a Phoenix Fire. It's a little bit awkward, but probably one of the better bets. Prismatic Illusionist, I'm sure you can create a bunch of 2/1s, but you don't want to be sending that 2/3 body in, so you're kind of wasting the Inner Focus. Adjudicator still not doing anything, and we do see that reason why people were very hesitant to play Adjudicator in Songhai, and why this is actually quite a rare pick despite being a spell-based deck, and that is that there's so many 0 mana, 1 mana spells in Songhai that reducing them by 1 doesn't really do anything, and suddenly you spent 3 mana to make a Saber Spine Seal, costing 0 mana instead. It's not really accomplishing much. So we do see just choosing to use the Inner Focus. This is quite decent play. Able to clear off the Primus Shieldmaster, get a Latin Fox out and going. That's pretty nice. And then also getting his Heartseeker to safety. choosing to inner focus, basically trading the inner focus for a Phoenix Fire and 2 health off Land Fox. I'm not 100% sure on that. I don't think there's too many answers that really punish it. Obviously there is the spell, but I'm not sure that you need that spell that badly. I think, you're off to a bad start as a Songhai player. Maybe you want to set up for a big swing turn with some of your spell-based effects. So we do see a very nice First Wish coming down, able to clear off that Heartseeker pretty efficiently for Grinch. And the Lightbender will come down, potentially, I imagine, and to deny that second Land Fox. Not really a lot else to go. You could just hit it with your face and, place a Journer. But I think we see the Reavers had to burn a few cards. Phoenix Fire is going out. Just, denying as much resources as possible. And I think that's perfectly fine. You don't really need the card draw. And Grinch didn't really have any proactive threats of his own. So, for Songhai, we do see that Prismatic Illusionist. It can come down, start creating a bunch of 2/1s. Phoenix Firing. I wonder if you will inner focus. It's very, very all in. Vitruvi doesn't typically have very good AoE. Only card that could potentially punish this is Star's Fury. So, I'm not sure he will inner focus. Looks like he might. It basically means you're going all in on this Prismatic Illusionist plan, which I'm just not sure will be enough to close out the game. If that's dealt with, you're suddenly at 0 cards. A couple 2/1s that aren't doing anything on their own. We also 2 cards are on, just because that Mana Vortex does place itself. We do see definitely easy way to clear for Grinch. He can chuck that Tiger in to the 2/3, hit one with his General, use the Pado, use even his Bloodborne spell if he wants to, or you don't need to clear that desperately. You can just potentially just play Sojourner as well. Definitely a lot of options for Grinch here in a very, very strong position. And we can see that card advantage is coming in very, very fast. And Grinch is still at a pretty comfortable life total at 19 health. A Songhai deck like this is definitely not designed to burst down that much damage, and still needs to try and play a value game, at least for the most part. Or may have just decided that he, off to a really bad start, the only way he can win is if Prismatic Illusionist just snowballs the game and somehow Grinch doesn't have an answer to it. We do see even the potential of something like a Wind Shroud plus a Dunecaster could clear off the Prismatic Illusionist, and then also playing Sojourner. But it looks like the Sojourner will be the play. I definitely have to imagine that that 2/3 will be dealt with. You probably could get away with ignoring it, but why would you put yourself in a position to lose like that? Really nice by Grinch here, choosing to run down first, guaranteeing the spawn of that Dervish, so then he can then guarantee that it can run down and kill this 2/3. Very heads up play from Grinch. I imagine we will see the 2/1 trade in. It doesn't necessarily have to be, but you're versing a Songhai, you still want to respect their potential damage and burst. Now Oren can restock with that Heaven's Eclipse, but you're just going to fall further and further behind on board. 5 mana, basically just skipping the turn board-wise, and we start to see a pretty threatening board from Grinch. That 4/2 can be traded into, the 2/1 can be traded into, but Sojourner's out there. It's going to be start drawing cards, and then Grinch can just, has 6 mana, 7 mana to just drop its own threat, use that Bloodborne spell, start pushing damage. Very, very strong position. Okay, choosing to deal with Sojourner rather than the 2/1, definitely can't blame that. We don't see too much Dervish synergy that it's worth killing the 2/1 instead. Definitely better to just deny those cards. So Grinch, free reign to develop whatever he wants. I imagine the second wish will come down. Very pesky for Songhai to deal with. It's going to start doing a lot of damage. We could potentially see second wish on both Tiger and Dervish, and that is very, very strong. Ton of damage coming in, a ton of pressure, very hard to deal with. 4 cards in hand. We don't see any spell-based removal, not the best Heaven's Eclipse. It's going to be very, very hard for Songhai to come back, putting down to 8. No way Grinch can really be bursted here. And we see the replace gives basically nothing. Heaven's Eclipse can come down, but you really need something like an Onyx Bear Seal to deal with that Tiger. And we just don't see it. So that will be the game for Grinch, and Memestorm does go up 3-1. That's Songhai. Now we have seen that the Songhai has missed turn 1 all 3 games, I believe. Well, actually might have gone second once. I'm not too sure about that, but has never had a 2-mana play. I don't think we've even seen a 2-mana minion, which if he's not running any, could definitely be a serious weakness of the deck. Just giving early free reign to any deck, even the more controlling deck in the matchup. We saw Grinch drop that Sojourner, immediately ceasing the tempo. Very, very hard for a Songhai to deal with. It works a lot better when it's ahead. Definitely going to be hard to win without those turn 1 plays. Potentially the deck just really wants to go second. Okay, so I will load up the next game. Fortunately, we'll be able to have both sides of the game as well. Always a plus. So Songhai, I believe, should still be on the table if I know the format correctly. Should still be available. Just quickly loading in. Now you're ready to go. Okay, just loading in now. So this matchup will be No Way It's Jay on Vayner versus Stremi once again on Liner this time. Did already get a win with Magma, now playing Liner. It will look like it will be RNG on Kara, I believe. Do apologise, Australian internet is making this a little bit of a difficult process, loading time wise as well. Definitely didn't need any more problems with the lack of a proper spectator mode. So we do see the Kara coming out. Definitely a quite interesting matchup. I believe Liner, the key for Liner in this matchup, I believe, is is playing stuff like Arclight Regalia, tempoing out early, because Kara does gain a lot of value in the long run, and often can run those cheap answers to stuff like Ironcliff Guardian with Aspect of the Fox, sometimes Hailstone Prison. It's all about Liner being able to stick a threat, and sometimes you can just stay at parity on the board and get ahead just using just Arclight Regalia, keep even on the board, and then that's basically impossible for Kara to remove efficiently. Okay, so can focus on the casting now. Game's finally set up. This is a very strenuous process, but we do see No Way It's Jay option on that Sojourner this turn. Not a lot else proactive. Could go for potential double 2 drops. Okay, just Cryogenesis. Yep, seems perfectly fine. Heart Sister, can't actually clear, because if you play on the mana tile, it won't get the mana effect because the opening gambit happens before. So something like Heart Sister, Switch Play More wasn't available to clear. Do see the Pandora coming out on No Way It's Jay, so definitely lots of late game in the deck, plus the natural late game ability of any Kara deck. We do see, I imagine the double 2 drop will come down. Probably would have liked to ramp into Dialytus, but definitely not as relevant in the Vayner matchup. Lots of cheap dispels, a lot harder for that Dying Wish effect to really go off. So the double 2 drop is very, very strong here. We do see potential answers. Jay can hit with the General, play more. Maybe use Harsist if you prioritize the Lion, but definitely a bit of a weaker hand. That Cloak is not going to be able to infiltrate anytime soon. Very clunky. A lot of 2 drops, but these 2 drops kind of just a bit outclassed by these 2 very, very strong Liner 2 drops that we see in nearly every Liner deck. Okay, so another Cloaker, not really helping much. Both 2/3s compared to a 2/3 with Celerity and a 4/3. Definitely outclassed very hard in this 2 drop department. we see a very massive lack of removal, and because Jay didn't move up to this square here, it means that he can't get onto 5 mana this turn, so he can't place a Jordan plus a 2-drop. Interesting decision. So just chooses to clear what he can, play a 2-drop. Definitely fine. I do actually like the positioning. He recognizes, well, I really need to get ball control as much as possible. I'm not going to rush my opponent down. I don't want to give any value trades, and I want to keep out of range of that line. Also stops something like buffing on the lion, hit the general, and then trade the 4-1 into the 2-3. Very nice positioning from Jay. So we do see probably a Dilatus coming down. He could use that Saber Spine, but I don't think you need to prioritize killing a Healing Mystic. Dilatus is very strong, sometimes slow minion, but definitely very strong. Okay, interesting choice. Okay, choosing to play slowly. Wants to use that Bloodborne spell. Very interesting. Going for that 5 mana, very, very strong, and able to use that Bloodborne spell. Doesn't mean he can't kill off the 2-2 for free, but he doesn't want to, just get Chromatic Cold on a Dilatus, and then suddenly he's, it's a lot closer on board. Ironcliff Guardian needs very specific answers, like Aspect of the Fox, which, is still a stronger board versus Chromatic Cold Dilatus. Basically going to be the strongest board as long as it's not, some kind of Hailstone Prison where it's equal. Plus he gets to use that Bloodborne spell. Using that Bloodborne spell on an Azeroth line and then just leaving it can be very, very strong. It's such a massive threat that just builds up for, so cheaply. And no HJ is definitely going to want to use some kind of removal on it at some point. So I think it's fine to leave the 2-2 up. It's quite difficult for Vayner to ever deal with this just purely by damage. Something like a Cryogenesis plus Primus Fist could do it, but I don't think Streamer would really mind too much with that anyway. I do like how he's chosen not to provoke all 3. He doesn't want the Healing Mystic to help. It's such a massive threat. Any deck that leaves a Ironcliff Guardian is probably going to have a lot of trouble. So just, wanting it to live as much as possible, obviously putting in range of the general. We don't see any Divine Bonds, but Jay definitely has to worry significantly about the threat. Hearth Sister can move the Ironcliff Guardian, but there's nowhere, too far away that it really wants to be. If he plays it here, he can move up with both and get away from it a little bit, but the Ironcliff is still pretty close. Healing Mystic provoked, you're in range of the line. Definitely not, too amazing to Hearth Sister here. So we do see the Hearth Sister. Looks like he's going to bring the lion in. Interesting decision. He can't clear that off because of the provoke. What he does choose to do instead is, just put it at 4 attack, at 1 health, 4 attack, so it can't get buffed and benefit from that celerity on the buffs. Does mean he's, it's in range of his general. Something like Holy Immolation could mean quite a lot of damage, but I don't think Jay is beating Holy Immolation in this game, whatsoever, because, it's going to come up here and Holy Immolate. Definitely very weak to Holy Immolation no matter what it does. So going for a play that can help him win the game, clear the board. I definitely like the ways Jay's played it. He's given himself a chance to clear the board. He does draw an Aspect of the Fox, so if we do see Streamy's other Ironcliff Guardian come down, then he will be able to deal with that one a little bit better. Plus the rest of the hand isn't too good. If he can deal with the threats, that Divine Bond's going to be useless. Lightbend is not amazing. It's pretty good against Kara just because it gets rid of all those 1/1 buffs. We could see that come out this turn, but you've seen that Jay can't deal with this Ironcliff Guardian, so maybe you just want to play another one, and then that Divine Bond is going to get a lot more value. We could see just a trade coming in. I imagine we might see that. Is potential for a full clear if he wants to trade in, and then trade in the Ironcliff, or we may just see another Ironcliff drop to the face and ignoring the 4/3. I don't actually mind that too much. The unfortunate thing is that you need to at least have one Ironcliff provoked, provoking the Hearth Sister if you want to avoid the other Ironcliff being killed, because if he played it, moved it here, and then he played Ironcliff over here, just walking that Hearth Sister. So choosing to clear, very, very good positioning here, meaning this 3/2 is protected. Holy Immolation can be very good with it, but now Jay can deal with this board decently, able to get rid of the provoke, clear the 3/2. So Streamy decided he doesn't need to go aggressive. Still has a pretty decent late game hand. we saw Kara running out of cards. So Jay able to actually get ahead on, well, you know, decently ahead on board. 3-4, yeah, I think we can definitely say he's ahead on board. Lionel won't have too much problem, you know, dealing with his board, able to easily train to this 3-4 and develop his own minion. But that Dancing Blade's definitely not doing a lot at the moment. So Stremi concedes that it's not going to be as easy as just sticking an Iron Cliff, getting rid of that Divine Bond. So a little bit awkward here. Very nice positioning by Jay, playing around Holy Immolation pretty well. You know, obviously you can attack and kill the 3-4, but leaving this John unharmed, and also, you know, playing around Lightbender just incidentally. I'm not sure if that was a conscious decision, but you know, probably a good thing to keep in mind when playing Kara. If you can afford to play your minions diagonally without really losing anything, probably a good idea. Lightbender's a pretty common card, and can, you know, get rid of those really annoying 1/1 buffs. So we may see just a potential Holy Immolation coming down, or maybe a trade and then playing Dancing Blades. It does mean that this Sojourner might get 2 cards out if he wants to attack the general. Does look like we're going for the Holy Immolation play. Definitely very aggressive, putting his opponent down at 6. We don't see any more burst out of hand, but a lot of pressure on Jay here. And he doesn't have an onboard answer to dealing with this 5-3, which he desperately needs to. Now, he may choose to replace his Pandora. Obviously that's going to really hurt, but he may just decide he needs to get ahead on tempo at this point. Does get the Joy card with Sojourner. Probably just going to be replacing the Dispel. I don't tend to like Dispel as a rule against Lionel, just because, you know, the bigger threats, dispelling them doesn't really stop you from dying to Divine Bond. It is good against Dilatus, that kind of thing, but nothing amazing. He may even just choose to play the Ephemeral Shroud. Okay, interesting decision. Oh, he's going face. Very interesting decision. Deciding he can, you know, he's blocking off his general. His generals should be safe from attack here. Deciding he needs to go aggressive. He needs to close out the game soon. At 6 health, you know, there's going to be a threat that he can't deal with, and he doesn't have any removal in hand. So I don't mind going aggressive here. We do see a Dancing Blade could come out, Dialysis could come out. I imagine we'll probably just see the Dancing Blades. We could, there's potential to do 3 damage with a Repulsor Beast, but no follow-up damage in the hand, so probably not the strongest. They could go Repulsor Beast, or you could go Repulsor Beast Dialyst, which is not actually that bad. You know, because you don't really care about taking 4 damage against the Kara, so I don't mind seeing. Okay, interesting. Repulsor Beast, the Saber Spine forward. Going for a Lightbender, a very, very nice play. I really, really like that. Clearing out the board, very, very nice play from Streamy. Getting rid of all those 1/1 buffs. Clearing the board. Putting his opponent in a very, very difficult situation. 2 cards, barely any answers. And also this positioning this general means that no one minion can block off all the attacks. With Pandora, that aspect of the Fox is going to do nothing but buff his opponent's board. So, I think. Okay, so Pandora will block. There's no way to block the 3-3. Everything else is blocked, so this is, you know, just as fine as moving up. No real difference there. If you moved up, would there have been a higher chance to spawn a wolf blocking? If you played it here, then there was probably the same, I think. Yeah, so we will see a Primus Fist drawn that will be lethal for the Lionel player. Another win to teamwork. Very interesting game there. Lionel able to consistently stay ahead on value and board. Those 2 Iron Cliffs just went well, the first Iron Cliff went unanswered. The other one, the aspect of the Fox, definitely wasn't clean whatsoever. Very, very strong game from the Lionel player. And in a matchup that can definitely go either way, I think Lionel needs to have pressure at all times, because a lot of Lionels aren't running stuff like Martyrdom. It's very, you know, to come back on board against these really big minions. So you need to have your own board pressure. We didn't see any Arclight Regalias, I don't believe, which is a massive card in that matchup. Very, very good against Kara, and you know, when I'm playing Lionel in my own games against Kara, Regalia tends to be my win condition a large majority of the time. So I will just quickly update the score. we do see Lion, I guess, his first win. And I will load into the next games. Okay. Hopefully, I'm not too sure if... Yes, we will be able to see both sides of the game, fortunately, which is always very nice. Nearly ready to go. Just quickly loading in. I really do hope that Counterplay comes up with a feature that will allow, you know, the ability to view both hands during replays. It would make tournaments so much easier. So at the moment now, you know, you can see it if you set it up, but you can hardly see it. It's small. I have to look at a different monitor because, you know, game capture stopped working, so I have to look at both monitors to see both hands. It's really a bit all over the place, which is a bit unfortunate. Quickly waiting. This mulligan phase is taking quite a long time, but we do see that, you know, Memestorm off to a pretty nice start. We did see a couple, you know, nice little comeback starting from work here. Liner and Magma, still two very strong factions, I believe. Vitruvian is probably the best faction I have, so there's quite a lot. And Lilith decks can be very strong. I'm not sure. I guess in fact it is the Abyssian is a Lilith deck, so very, very strong deck. Lilith definitely top tier. So two very strong decks. We do see the Lilith, or well, the Abyssian still available for Memestorm, but Zerix already has a win, so definitely, you know, a lot more even than the score suggests, even though it's pretty close. Okay, so we are into game. We are in the mulligan phase, and we can see Louvain is running a Cassiva creep deck. Already see some, you know, synergy with it. Shadow creep plus the Darkspine elemental. Definitely agree with those mulligans there. You don't really need that many 2-drops, especially in this matchup. You're not trying to go aggressive, you're just trying to control the board. I'll just pause the replay for 1 second there, just as we get it all in sync. Okay, we are ready to go. So, from Mr. Lumbar's side, we see that Adjudicator coming in. Now, Adjudicators, you know, if it's a card you're seeing in an Abyssian, you probably expect it to be from a Cassiva deck, able to get the Shadow Novas early. We see, you know, can already hit 2 spells. There's not a lot else to do, apart from Spelljammer. So we may just see it come down now, and storing up 3 mana that's not being used, you know, that amazingly. You don't really need Spelljammer at the moment. It can arguably, you know, hurt you in this matchup because Cassiva is all about finding those Shadow Novas. So the Adjudicator does come down. Not a great board presence. It can potentially be pinged off if it lives another turn. But, you know, decent spot. I do definitely like, you know, playing it here. You're not going to ramp into 5 mana with it successfully. It's very, very unlikely. So we do see a Spelljammer could potentially come down, but I think more importantly, Dialytus could definitely come down. You know, probably the strongest 4 mana card in the game, at least in a proactive sense. Primus Shieldmaster can be better in some situations, but if I'm the one, you know, first on the board, I definitely want to be playing Dialytus. It can be traded into by the 3/1, and the 0/10 obviously isn't as, you know, deadly in a faction that's not Lionar with Divine Bond, but still pretty good. There is the, you know, question of where to play it. Do you play it on a mana tile, deny the ramping it to 5 mana? Or do you simply play it, you know, back here and keep it away from this 3/1? I think I would probably just play it on the mana tile. It's definitely a hard choice because, you know, do you expect your opponent to ramp into 5 mana threats, and can you deal with them? If you play it back here, what can we expect from a Lilith? Something like, you know, Black Solace, it's actually not too bad. You have the Dilatus here, you can actually clear it pretty free, and your opponent would probably not do that anyway. I mean, they could just move it and play it back here. Something like that could be fine. That's probably what you're most scared of. Even then, it's not. It's definitely a little bit risky leaving your opponent 5 mana available because you don't have an answer to Black Solace. You know, I think it's fine just to position it safe. You don't want to give it a free trade. That 0-10 isn't going to do that much because Lilith's not, you know, you're protecting nothing really. Lilith's not trying to just rush you down. They don't really have a lot of burst. So, and you know, you're only protecting a 2/3 Primus Fist with Provoke. So, I can definitely see the reasoning behind this. Okay, as for Mr. Lumber, we do see a potential Blood Moon Priestess here, able to get at least a free 1/1 with the trade-in of the 3/1. He does actually have the ability to ramp quite decently here. If he moves on to the mana tile and then play this on the mana tile, he would then have 6 mana, or well, 2 mana left over after it was put on the mana tile, able to play both spells. So there's actually a full clear apart from the Tombstone here. If you run this in, Blood Moon Priestess up onto this mana tile, then you can Grasp of Agony on the Dilatus, and then Ritual Banishing onto it. And then you can actually clear everything apart from the Tombstone, and that would be 3 deaths plus 3 damage to the general. Deciding to be a little bit more patient with his resources, which I don't really mind. His opponent's board isn't that threatening. And, you know, BC does kind of lack, you know, efficient ranged answers to this kind of minions, as we do see Louvain, no answer to this Blood Moon Priestess. And, you know, we can see, you know, the generation of creep from the Bloodborne spell, not really going to actually clear off the minion. It will just respawn again, but you know, definitely better than nothing. You just want to get that creep out there. We could even see a Dancing Blades coming down. You know, killing this does have the slight advantage of moving out of the action, making it harder for it to be traded into, which is some slight advantage, but not really doing a lot. Emerald Rejuvenate could come down, but that 3/3 body isn't that relevant, and you don't need a healing. Definitely just want to set up for a play which can, you know, allow Louvain to clear that Blood Moon Priestess next turn. That could potentially just be like something like moving your general forward, playing a Spelljammer or an Emerald Rejuvenator, and then trying to get it with the Dancing Blades next turn. Otherwise, it's quite difficult. There could also be a potential with, you know, ping plus a general hit. You really need to try and kill that. So it looks like Louvain will go the more aggressive plan, just trying to send everything in, trying to rush down the opponent, maybe kill them with a turn 7 Shadow Nova, potentially goes turn 7 into turn 8 Shadow Nova. That's probably the one of the better bets. We do see the Dispel comes out now, a bit of a turn too late, and we can see quite a few ways for Mr. Lumber to start generating some 1/1s. Now I believe there is a clear here, a pretty nice one in fact. If you Lightbender here, if you Lightbender, then you can Ritual Banishing as well. So yeah, you can Lightbender, so not Ritual Banishing, I mean Grasp of Agony on the 5/1, attack it, and then clear the board, deal 3 damage. It does mean you take 5 damage, which will put you at 11, 2 potentially from the general. You'll be at 9 health. That Shadow Nova is definitely starting to be a ticking time bomb, but you will get a bunch of 1/1s. If you see Shadow Dancer, I definitely think this play is automatic, and moving away instead, meaning that the Dilatus won't be able to be attacked, so the Spelljammer will need to be sent in by the Blood Moon Priestess to kill this. And I think that you wanted to do that first so you could keep this Blood Moon Priestess safe. I believe you could have done it that way and then attacked in. So maybe a slight misplay there. Or maybe he's just trying to bait his opponent into coming in closer. We don't see any of the Deathfire Crescendo Grimoire kind of things, but definitely something that's very, very relevant when you have a board full of 1/1s. Okay, so Dancing Blades can come out. There is the option to run up to the Priestess, but it is getting very, very dangerous because, well, always 1/1s, and there's a lot of ways to punish that. I think maybe you do need to do it though. You have the double Emerald Rejuvenator. You have to find a way to come back into this game. You don't have good AoE. You're not going to be able to kill them with Shadow Nova anytime soon. I think that's a potential way to just hope you don't die. So that is potential. Otherwise, you can play Dancing Blazers, you can just run away and try and play around those Death Watch things, but you're gonna have that 4/6 there for them to trade in anyway. And maybe your opponent makes the mistake of just trading all the 1/1s in for instant damage. I doubt many Abyssinian players would do that, but at least can buy you some time. Now, I definitely wouldn't fault Louvain for just simply running away here, trying to get out of range for all his ones. I think the card that's most relevant damage-wise is something like Shadow Dancer. If you're, playing something like a Deathfire Crescendo and any minion can hit you, it doesn't really matter which one can hit you. But if you're playing Shadow Dancer, suddenly those 1/1 Wraithlings that are dealing 1 damage are now dealing 2 damage if they're hitting your general instead, because of the Dying Watch effect. Okay, so we do see a replace into a Deathfire Crescendo, as I was talking about. I'm going to give a minion +2 for every time another minion dies. So definitely potential lethal here. We can go over the amount of deaths. That is, this one needs to be hit in. So that's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. So that's 15. So that's if everything gets traded in. And then you have a Ritual Banishing. I don't think that's enough though, because the only minion that can trade in blocks off the general hit, so there's no way to get the general hit. If you're Ritual Banishing this at the end, then that means you've missed out on 2 deaths because you haven't killed this thing. So I don't think there's any way for lethal to be had. I do believe this will be 15 damage because there was 7 minions that could die. There was also the potential to so doing this way, so don't think you could possibly get the Blood Moon Priestess in that's not true because it does 3 damage, so it blocks some other attacks. So I don't think there was any lethal missed. I do apologize, probably wasn't the best commentating, just trying to figure out all this really hard Abyssinian maths. But we do see that Louvain does survive, is able to dispel one, and play a more Rejuvenator. So you probably weren't getting a much better chance to live in that situation, but still looking pretty dire. Shadow Nova can come out next turn, but that board is massive. It's not going anywhere anytime soon. Definitely looking pretty strong for Mr. Lumber here. We don't see any more Deathwatch effects. Well, buffing effects. We do see the Blood Moon Priestess able to generate just another board full of 1/1s. We do see Deathfire Crescendo, but no way for a Wraithling to get into range of the enemy general. You definitely kind of want to save that for lethal, I believe. So just choosing to generate a massive board and hopefully put his opponent onto a 2-turn clock. I wouldn't have minded even seeing a more aggressive positioning of this Blood Moon Priestess. We know it's going to be able to, completely surround itself. There will be potentially 6 Wraithlings, so if you play it here, a pretty good chance is covered. The 3/3 body is relevant when your opponent is slow. It's very hard to run away from. I think that's perfectly fine there. This way, if you somehow get unlucky or your Wraithlings come up here, then you run away to the general, there's nothing in range. So it does look like we might see that actually. If this spawn doesn't come here, there is now a safe spot. Interesting. With that Deathfire Crescendo, I think you definitely just need to make sure you have a minion in range. Though obviously you need a couple minions in range of something in order to be able to get those procs off. Okay, so just simply running away. Playing any minion here is basically suicide to Deathfire Crescendo. So just going for that Shadow Nova, I do like this play. I definitely agree with it because you got to put your opponent on that chance to kill them soon. It's not going to happen. We do see, because the 2/1 wasn't traded in, this Deathfire Crescendo will get more procs, but you're probably going to lose your Deathfire Crescendo anyway. We will see it come down. But Shadow Nova wasn't really going to win anyway because you move to this corner, play one here, 6, 7, plus the bubbles, but it would have been 8 damage max. So it wouldn't have been a way to kill them because it would have been at 9 health. From Louvain's perspective, a decent shot, but really unable to answer that Blood Moon Priestess early. And we saw a bit. Okay, so the webcam is back. We will load into our next game. So I would say just obviously I'm a bit biased towards Memestorm, so I'm not going to talk too much about players. And I'm not too familiar with work, but going off the factions left, I would say maybe a slight edge to work, just because Xerix is the strongest faction. And then Vayner obviously equal in power, and Songhai. Songhai is pretty comparable to Magma, so just that slight edge faction-wise left, but definitely something to keep in mind. And definitely a very unexplored area of which factions do you use. Which ones do you want to save? Do you want to save that Xerix early and try and punish that faction that's struggling to win, really securing it out? Do you play it early and trying to snipe one of the better factions? Because there is the game's pretty balanced, but obviously the stronger factions, and Xerix is a faction you really want to be 1-0ing with. Or do you save it? Do you wait for its worst matchup to hopefully go 0-2? Lots of different strategies, but I think Xerix is just in general a deck you really want to win with, because it's very, very strong. Okay, so fortunately all of work was able to add me, so we will be able to see all the games, I believe, from both perspectives, which is really nice. We see a ton of ribbons on both sides here. Both very experienced players. Load in. Just quickly waiting. So we do see Grinch playing that mech deck that we saw earlier. We do see Elucidator, so definitely still lots of aggression, even if it does have a little bit more late game mechs. Already looking like a pretty decent starting hand, a lot better than last time. We got 2 into 3 or 2 into 4, all that kind of potential. I'm not sure Elucidator will be kept. It's not that great early. Definitely more of a finisher card. These mulligans are taking a while. Just on the other screen. Okay, so we will get in. Okay, so we'll see what Grinch does. I imagine that the Repulsor Beast is going not the best early card. He definitely wants to be a bit more reactive, and probably not expecting to see any massive minions early. Chasis is probably getting kept. It's hard to throw away a mech deck, any mech in a mech deck, so I don't imagine that will go. And it's basically just does Elucidator when I go. I imagine he wants the early mech as much as possible. Only Chromatic Cold can really deal with it for Vayner, and that's not a full answer. It still leaves an A6 on the board, so I imagine the Elucidator and the Repulsor Beast will go. Okay, choosing to keep the Repulsor Beast, interesting choice. Doesn't want to get stopped, by a 4/7 Primus Shield Master coming out, and allows him to push tempo when he already is expecting to have a board lead with his early game minions. So we do see a pretty strong start with a Raki Headhunter. Interesting if he chooses to keep the Eggmorph here. I feel like Repulsor Beast and Eggmorph already do a pretty similar job. Okay, choosing he wants to have threats. He's not too concerned with an early Mechazor. Guess the idea is, deal with those early threats that come out of Kara, and then he'll get to Mechazor eventually and probably rush him with a Vindicator. So if you're planning on rushing it with a Vindicator, which you definitely want to do in some of the more controlling matchups, it's fine to wait and just try and keep these reactive cards in hand. Now, Furoka does have the best answer to a Raki Headhunter in the game with that Saber Spine Tiger. Very, very nice positioning. This means that if Grinch wants to kill it off, he won't be able to make use of the Mana Tiles. We can see from Grinch's hand that's probably not something he wants to do anyway. But you know, there's a good chance he would want to just deny this middle Mana Tile anyway. We don't see any 5-drops in hand for Furoka, which is definitely increases the importance a lot of this Mana Tile being taken, but still, you know, very, very relevant. Okay, so we do see the Repulsor Beast going away, and we now see, you know, why it's such a downside for this positioning. Okay, I do like this play. You know, obviously you want to get these sort of mechs out earlier. It's, you know, the biggest threat. Works a lot better as on an empty board, and then can threaten to make really good trades. But you know, he wants to kill off that 3/1. He doesn't want to give his opponent more value. He can stops any potential ramping into 5 mana. Definitely agree with this play from Grinch. So for Rocket, you know, nothing too good. We do see a couple of in-hand answers to Mechazor already, just in the form of Dispel, which isn't the most reliable, and nothing too proactive. I imagine we'll probably just see double 2-drop coming out of him, with the Primus and the Healing Mystic. I don't really think there's a lot of merit to do anything else, so I imagine we'll just see it playing here. Could potentially play it here, try and deny the Mana Tile, but you know, Vath can still walk up Eps. So we will sit on the Mana Tile, as I did expect, I imagine. Yep, so just clearing it off, giving myself at full health, and you know, we see an okay hand from Grinch. He does have a Chaser, some Mechazor, but not the most stunning thing. Only playing 1 threat at a time, so he's able to clear a minion if he... Okay, interesting choice. I do like it. Keeping as much board presence as possible, using that Bloodborne spell as soon as you can. The Chases and Mechazor isn't really, you know, helping for board control that much more than a Sword of Mechazor. So, no actual answer in hand to this Sword of Mechazor, at least killing it. We will see if he replaces it into one. He can dispel it, but you know, not the... I doubt we'll see the dispel come out. Otherwise, unless it's just for tempo, he can Bloodborne spell, so it will be a 3/3, which is probably fine. So yeah, maybe we probably will see the dispel, probably the Hearth Sister. I imagine that Furoka just wants to contest the board as much as he can. He doesn't really need to worry too much about value. It is possible with this, you know, very weak hand, that he could be outvalued, but in general, you know, his deck definitely outvalues his opponents. So will we see the Hearth Sister come down? I imagine so. Not a ton of great ways to, you know, really use that ability. I do like attacking the 1/4. It's probably going to get 2 hits off at any point, and you might as well just take that 1 damage. It's not really too relevant. Okay. Interesting choice with the Primus Fist. Not choosing to play the Hearth Sister. That may just be a concession that he thinks his hand is pretty weak, and he doesn't really want to just waste cards. He might want, you know, rather replace it or save it for a Mechazor at some point. A couple of different options. We do see the Greater Fortitude buffing up the sort of Mechazor, allowing it to live and trade in. Able to clear the board without hero power. So Grinch able to, you know, tempo out pretty well, consistently clearing his opponent's board and developing threats at the same time. Always in a pretty nice position to be in. Interesting decision with the sort of the Mechazor, with the Chasers of Mechazor here. Now allows his opponent the potential to simply run away from it. Interesting decision here. I wonder what the reasoning here was. Could be something like a Dancing Blades. Maybe he just doesn't even want to have everything provoked by a Primus Shieldmaster. But he does have an Eggmorph in hand. Interesting decision, definitely. And we do see, you know, what the downside of this play is that can be run away from. We could have seen the Dispel and then the Cryogenesis come out. But I can't fault someone for just avoiding a free 5 damage when they need to. There's no urgent need to deal with that threat. Able to get Sojourner, hopefully get some more, you know, heavy hitting cards, because Furoka hasn't really drawn any, you know, high cost proactive minions that can really start to lock the game down. Stuff like Primus Shieldmaster can come out. just a couple 1/1 buffs really can lock a game out. Now we do see the Grinch is at 80% progress, so he could have played Mechazor there if he chases Mechazor. I definitely like the way Grinch has played it though, choosing to take the more disciplined approach and wait to rush Mechazor next turn with a Vindicator. Against control, you don't want to allow them to stabilize the game after Mechazor is dealt with, especially in case of something like a Sunset Paragon or Hollow Grove Keeper. So definitely nice play, very disciplined, and it's very hard for, well, probably won't be lethal next turn, but the turn after that is going to be very hard to avoid lethal. Anything that Frocka can play here is going to be dealt probably by a Mechazor Frenzy. So a very, very commanding position for Grinch here. He can, do something like a Dispel, and then we did have the... Did he replace the Cryogenesis? I might have missed that. But yeah, I think if he did have Cryogenesis, he might have replaced it. Anyway, he could just play something like 2 Hearth Sisters, try and block himself off in the corner, which is terrible against Mechantors, all that kind of thing. Maybe you could even play one here, run off, at least block some attacks. But Mecantor is still very, very lethal in that situation, but at least you're blocking one attack. It really depends how greedy he wants to be. I imagine he might just want to play one here, and run off. Definitely don't want to play all 3 in Frenzy range, I don't think. But definitely not an easy situation whatsoever. Well, I wonder if he could play Hearth Sister here, switch it over. Hearth Sister here, switch it over. And then you have a Hearth Sister here and here. So you're only getting hit by the general. That's not as bad. Don't know if he's that worried about Chasers and Mechazor being hit by a spell though. He chooses to play nothing. Wow, really not respecting the potential of this aggro deck to, just start hitting him in the face and playing more threats. It's going to be so hard to come back on tempo here. And I do apologize, I forgot about the 1 damage rush from Vindicator. So I believe that will be lethal. That's 9, 17, 18 damage. For the exact lethal from Grinch on 7 mana. Pretty strong start. We saw this Chasers and Mechazors, quite difficult threats to deal with, and we saw a very, very early game orientated hand against range draw from the Mechazor deck. So that will be the win, and Memestorm takes back the lead 4-3. Only 2 more wins to go. 1 with Abyssian and 1 with Vayner. Right, we will get into our next game. Nearly ready to go. Okay, so only 2 more wins. Work still have that Xerix, which is, as I've said, very, very strong. Interesting to see. Songhai could be pretty good against this lineup. Can be decent against Abyssian at times if you can stop the early aggression. But definitely pretty good against Vayner in my opinion. And Vayner can definitely deal with some Abyssian decks if it's if it's not playing stuff like Shadow Creep, which we see Louvain is though. So definitely could be an interesting matchup there. Probably want a more aggressive Vayner if that's the case, which it wasn't overly aggressive, so it could be a good matchup there. We will wait and see. Okay, so we will get started in our 8th game. Okay, so we can see that it is that Vayner Cassiva matchup. I do believe this is probably a pretty decent matchup. For Louvain, against those slower decks, Shadow Creep can really punish and put a clock on the game. It has late game inevitability, but if Frocka can get some early pressure, have those bigger threats that Abyssian can't deal with amazingly well, can be alright. So we do see Snow Chasers played. Definitely a fine turn 1 play. You need something on turn 1, and it's a lot better going first. He can definitely infiltrate next turn. So So we do see a couple options here. I believe we'll probably just see a combination of 2-drops able to block off the Infiltrate. Otherwise you may see the Demonic Claw. I don't hate the Demonic Claw, but in a deck like Shadow Creep, you really want to be using it with those Shadow Creep killing off minions for free. Choosing to instead to deny the middle middle square, allowing a free Infiltrate here. Interesting decision. I'm not sure if I'm a massive fan of it. We could see a clear plus another Snow Chaser developed. A pretty strong turn potentially here. So Saberspine on the mana tile, trading in Saberspine into the 3/3, and then playing another Snow Chaser seems pretty good. Keeps you ahead on the board at least. And it wasn't really a lot of other options there that could stay ahead on tempo. So yes, you can't play the Snow Chaser here because you got to trade in. It's still pretty good. I do like this positioning here. Obviously you want to kill off this 2/1 when you can, but stopping them doing it from the mana tile is also very strong. We don't see a great hand from Louvain here, and it's not clear what you want to replace. I think I would probably lean on the side of replacing Saberspine Tiger. I think the bigger threats, the ones that you're worried about, Demonic Lord is a little bit better than Saberspine Tiger. So you may just choose to block off the opponent onto the side of the board. Okay, interesting. Looks like we might be seeing quite an aggressive play from Louvain, going for 5 damage with that Tiger. Interesting choice of positioning here. I think I prefer it here. Keep them on that side of the board. This way, this Infiltrate minion can be played again. And choosing to ignore this, definitely an interesting play. Deciding, Louvain wants that early damage to get the opponent low, that the first couple Shadow Novas really do a lot of work. Not too worried about that 2/1, and gets rewarded for it. The fact that it's traded in without doing anything else basically means you essentially got a free hit out of your general, which is pretty nice. Okay, so definitely some strong turns from Louvain here, but this is the part of the game when Kara gets really good, starts buffing up a ton of minions here. And it's really hard for Louvain to follow up this aggression. No Shadow Creep generated yet means that this Darkspine Elemental is doing nothing. There is potential. Well, I didn't actually mind Dispel, trade in both Abyssal Scout, and then play the 3/3. I think that might have been a bit better, and as we can see, it would have turned out potentially a little bit better. Will we see going in for the creep, or will we just see? Oh, wow, going very aggressive from Louvain here. We're going with a bit of a smoke Cassiva here, but we do see some pretty nice tools for stopping aggression in Sunset Paragon. I believe it is already a 4/3, able to come down, completely wipe the board, leave with the Sojourner ahead. Okay, so we do see the punish. Louvain low on cards, does have a little bit more aggression in possible with Saberspine Tiger, but once again, still hasn't really been developing any Shadow Creep, any permanent big threats. Can create at least one here. I'd imagine that'll definitely come down. And the fact that Louvain's gone so all in on this aggression means it kind of needs to keep Shadow Nova. Interesting choice to replace the Tiger there. I think you might have to just concede the fact that you've gone in a bit too hard and go for a Shadow Nova play. We do see that Kara would have punished this pretty hard with those Emerald Rejuvenators, but with only 2 cards in hand versus a full 6 of Kara, plus that really strong ability, I just think that you're not going to win on advantage, on card advantage on value. Maybe you just need to go for a Shadow Nova, hope to draw another one with that Saberspine Tiger, because as it stands, with no other damage included, 2 Shadow Novas won't even be enough to, well, actually, it'll be 5, 7, 7. You need to generate at least one more because you can move to that corner there. So, not sure. I think at some point maybe Louvain just needed to decide, I have to go aggressive here and hope to draw because I've been outvalued pretty hard. Could see a Dancing Blades come down here. Emerald Rejuvenator, not really needed quite just yet. As a 6/8 for 5 mana. Very damage, very, very strong. Just showing that ability. And we see just how strong these Kara decks can be, playing all these opening Gambit minions. So balanced around, having weak stats but a strong ability. Suddenly Kara gives him good stats and it just gets out of control. Okay, so we do see the first Shadow Nova come down. Very excellent positioning by Furoka here, not giving any potential value to a Shadow Nova more than it has to. Very nice positioning of the Shadow Nova as well. You don't want to play it in this corner here because, well, you don't want to let them run to the corner and avoid some potential shadow creep. We don't think we saw that the general running back, which is a little bit interesting. I think blocking the damage, or just completely avoiding the damage of the 6-8 might have been a bit better there. Now that Dancing Blades can get for 6 damage and probably put Louvain at least at 2-turn clock, which may have potentially been avoided, because you definitely need more than 2 turns here. That Emerald Rejuvenate coming down is very, very tough. Now it means that second Shadow Nova won't get the kill. If Louvain can generate another Shadow Creep somehow, probably on the 4-3, then they can get it up to 6 Shadow Creep. Still not enough. It needs to be consistently creating Shadow Creep, so we need another. That's also assuming we have another Shadow Nova, so we need a couple of running Shadow Novas plus survival tools. It's looking very, very dire for Louvain, and I'm really struggling to see any outs that could come out. Potentially maybe another Shadow Nova here, ping on here, and that would actually leave Louvain alive. Yeah, that's perfectly fine. You need to keep the Demonic Claw. Okay, so that's not too bad. So you could ping here, Shadow Nova, and run away. There's potential you could just go Demonic Claw, ping, and trade. It's putting you down to 4, which is risky. But 6 mana after the Demonic Law not being used whatsoever. That would create 6 Shadow Creep. Would have the power next turn. So that could be the 7th. So potential to get a kill with Shadow Nova actually. So maybe you do go for that play here, because this would create the 6th Shadow Creep. Then you can Demonic Law this one. I think you have to do that to survive. Or you can Demonic Law this one. Yeah, so ping this one, Demonic Law this one, and then attack this one. Okay, this works out pretty equal, but using the Shadow Nova basically means you're relying on drawing that third one to win. With only 1 left in the deck, I'm not sure it's too possible. But it's playing to an out. Okay. So something I didn't actually mention, and this is completely my fault. We did see this very nice play dispelling this square here with the Ephemeral Shroud, creating a situation where Shadow Nova can only deal 3 damage extra. So that actually makes it a lot harder. So probably factors into why Louvain made that play, knowing that she can't win with another Shadow Nova. So yeah, that was my fault. I did not notice that. Very nice play from Furoka. Definitely deserves to be pointed out. That other Emerald Rejuvenator will come down. It's probably going to spell the end of the game for Louvain. Another Shadow Nova won't be enough. It would only create 4, 6, 9, 12 damage. Which, there's no combination of ways to kill the opponent. Shadow Nova here could do some work, Demonic Law could, but it's all starting to get a little bit out of control. So there is the third Shadow Nova. So Louvain drawing all 3, very, very strong. Definitely something you'd expect to be really, really good in this game, but just got outvalued so hard early game. At times, 2 cards versus 6 cards, very, very hard to come back for, and wasn't able to pressure consistently with that Shadow Nova. Had to use it on the opponent's minions. Was lower than the opponent, and that healing card that came in was just completely deadly. We would have seen, if the Emerald Rejuvenator didn't come in, that this play would have killed the opponent, I believe. Yeah, so it would have been 6, 8, 11. So it would have so it would have been lethal if the second Emerald Rejuvenator didn't come in. So played well to the outs. Emerald Rejuvenator did come in. That will probably spell the end of this game, I would imagine. There is the ability to clear here, doubling up on some Shadow Nova. Okay, Louvain deciding that, there's no way she is going to win if she just clears the board. That's the win condition gone. Putting that Shadow Nova on there, and creating potential scenarios to win with something like a Saberspine Tiger. The positioning of this is quite fortunate in that, Kara has to move either this way, makes it easier for Saberspine to reach. But if Araka is able to recognize this is the only out, I don't think Darkseer would be run in most Cassivias. Then just making sure that all paths with a Rush Cat are blocked off should be a pretty easy way to secure the win, which I imagine we will definitely see. And that's assuming that Cassivia could even draw one. So we will see a Dancing Blades come down, making sure that path is blocked off, I imagine. Well, actually, this positioning of this possibly a bit of a mistake here. If Cassivia did draw that Saberspine Tiger, able to run up and play it, it would be lethal in a game that should have not have been losable. So, Furoka need to make sure playing to any possible outs from Louvain. Fortunately for them, will not be a Rush Cat off the top, and it will be the game for Louvain. No way possible to come back in this one. No way to block on this A10, and the concede will come out. And a series on our hands, guys. 4-4. Definitely a lot more, interesting than the last series I casted, which was 6-2. Definitely a lot closer. 4-4. And after a bit of a shaky start for work, going down 3-1 pretty early, 4-4. Second loss with that Cassivia deck. Okay. So now we have the Vitruvian and Songhai versus the Abyssian and Vayner, which I do believe is probably a pretty good matchup for work. Xerix, as I've said, is a very, very strong deck. Well, I'm assuming it's Xerix. It could be Sarge, of course. I tend to just assume Vitruvians are Xerix, but we will see. Let me just quickly get up the next game. So I do apologize just to how long these videos take. It is a best of 11. So for those of you who watch the whole thing, thanks a lot for that. It is a lot of time out of my day to do these, but I enjoy making them. I like to showcase off my team, and just put out more content for those. Some of these games are done on the official stream, but obviously they can't do all of them. If you like to see more of this content, please let me know. I'm trying to work on my casting as much as possible. I don't really think I've done an excellent job today. I've been rambling a little bit. Some of this Abyssian math is really a bit difficult. Not going to lie. Definitely something you need to think about a bit more. But I still want to bring my usual level of analysis, and I'm trying to do something that you won't typically do, where you would. I'm trying to announce all the plays and analyze them, where normally I'm trying to just focus on analyzing them a little bit more. Anyway, we will get into our next game. It will be Louvain versus Confurious on actually a Sarge. So I've been saying Xerix all video, but we do see the Sarge. Unfortunately, I don't have Confurious added on my friends list, so we won't see both deck lists, but we can imagine some kind of slightly more late game artifact based deck. Artifact is basically the reason you play Sarge over Xerix. But no, not necessarily. But as a pretty general rule, if you're not playing artifacts, you probably shouldn't be playing Sarge. Anyway, it's great to see these alternate generals. Lots of different decks being played. We've seen both Songhais. We've seen both Abyssians. I think that might be, and now both Vitruvians. So decent versatility, showing that the game is fairly balanced. Though I don't think this is going to be an argument for Xerix not being the best faction general by quite a lot. Anyway, we do see a very, very strong start from Confurious, able to get that Pyromance on turn 1 where it is best against Abyssian, which doesn't really have great ways to deal with it. We do see a Dispel in the hand of Louvain. It does mean that that Spelljammer plus a 2-drop can't come out this turn. So I imagine we might see something like a Primus Fist on the 2-3, Dispel here, able to clear the board and develop its own threats. Interesting, not choosing to play a 2-mana card potentially here. Very interesting. Now this might mean that the Primus Fist will get replaced. Maybe trying to play a really heavy value game. Choosing not to replace at all. Interesting decision. Not too sure how keen I am on that. It does allow you to go 3-2 next turn, but unlikely to get used to that effect. I think I would rather just play the Primus Fist and get it out there on this turn. Play something like Dialysis, Bloodborne spell potentially next turn. However, this does preserve both mana tiles, which maybe Louvain wants to ramp into. Somehow, if the Healing Mystic lived, then he could potentially ramp into 6 mana. We do see a very strong play, just dropping the Primus Shieldmaster, stopping any use of the mana tiles here. I imagine we'll see a Dialysis come down pretty fast here. Playing both 2-drops does basically nothing here. Okay, so really going to need a spell to deal with a 0-10 body. Vitruvian's not really great at dealing with high health creatures otherwise. We do see a potential use of the Bloodborne spell. Okay, but instead, an even better answer, using that Dancing Blades. Wouldn't mind potentially have seen the General move up here first, making sure that the General can walk both ways onto mana tiles. And obviously the Primus Shieldmaster has this one covered, but perfectly fine to stay in the middle. And definitely nitpicking more than anything else. Not a much stronger turn for Louvain here. No way to clear either of these minions. Could drop a 3-drop and a 2-drop. I imagine we'll probably just see the Dialysis come out. It's the best for board control, but it's still not doing a ton. The Bloodborne spell will refresh, so if the Dialysis comes out, then we'll probably just see that played just on the 3-3, just because, you might as well. I can't imagine Spelljammer Primus Fist gets played here. They both die pretty easily. And the Vitruvian play is pretty low on cards here, so Spelljammer could actually be quite, against your own agenda there. So Spelljammer does come down, choosing to be mana efficient. Probably would have been better to play the Primus Fist onto here. That Bloodborne spell will refresh. Might as well get that free 1 damage. But definitely a very strong spot for the Sarge. That Bloodborne spell can be used to take out either of Louvain's minions for free, if so chooses to, and playing a 5-drop or even a 6-drop such as a Maya Healer. We do see a pretty good late game hand for Louvain, but we didn't see any use of the Bloodborne spell to generate Shadow Creep for the first 2 turns that it was available, meaning that was a completely wasted opportunity. That Shadow Creep's not going to do a lot by itself when it comes down. Spectral Burn could be good in the next couple turns. Slight potential that Louvain will be able to run to the mana tile and play it next turn, but pretty unlikely. I can't imagine Sarge letting that happen. Choosing once again to play the not use the Bloodborne spell. So both players missing their Bloodborne spells. I think there, if you're not attacking with the Primus Shieldmaster, you may be better off just running down, play the Maya Healer and your Bloodborne spell. Though maybe you just want the Spelljammer to live if you are the Sarge player. But very, very strong start. No answers to some Maya Healer, and anytime a Maya Healer is not answered, it is a very, very dire situation for the player facing it. Such a massive health swing, and when you're already at 18 life, and a Maya Healer staying you down is pretty dangerous. If it gets to attack, it's going to be doing at least 10 damage once it dies, and there's actually no good way for it to be dealt with. The Dancing Blades has been played around. Probably some teammate on work has told Confurious, there is Dancing Blades, consider it a possibility, which means that this is going to be doing at least 10 damage for this Maya Healer, unless an answer is drawn very, very soon. There's just really not a lot of good plays here. Emerald Rejuvenator doesn't really do much, doesn't help contest the board, Dark Spire is completely useless. It may be just a situation where you have to, Abyssal Scar, trade everything in, and then play an Emerald Rejuvenator. That would leave you at 15. It would leave it 17, 12 health, I believe. I probably butchered that math. I wasn't really counting very well. Maybe it would have been an extra 10 damage. So 14, I believe. Anyway, That's not too relevant. It was a very dangerous play. I don't mind just ignoring this. You can't give any more damage to this Amaya if you can. You kind of have to bank on just drawing an answer, which Louvain decided and kind of realised. A Demonic Ball was drawn, but also another Amaya Healer dropped. Confused to see there was no answer for the last one. Might as well drop it again. Choosing once again not to kill off that Spelljammer, making sure it doesn't run out of resources, even if this really strong board is dealt with. And as we can see, Civ is not very good at using this Spelljammer when it has a hand of high cost minions. It's only playing 1/3 a turn. So we do see a Demonic Law come out. Interesting. No way to deal with this Amaya Healer though still. You can trade both in, that's going to be 10 damage, leaving you dead on board. I think Dialysis is the only way that you can really live. Well, Dialysis would leave you at 1 health, I believe, because the Dying Wish could go off. Well, you could, if you get a friendly provoke, it can be okay. That would leave you at, otherwise it would leave you at 9 damage on board, so 1 health on board. Definitely a very dangerous play if you just ignore it. You basically can't ignore this Amaya Healer. So you have to ignore this Amaya Healer. You can't let her live. This is the only play that allows Louvain to have any chance of living. Okay, so making sure to attack with the primary shield must first is very important. Attacking in there. Very nice. So it would have only been 9 damage if the Dialytus traded in. That's assuming a nice spawn. With the Dancing Blade, something you can do, it does work on all minions. Able to get that lethal there. Very, very nice play from the Sarge, and really nice to see that Sarge getting a win. Though, probably not worth getting too excited over. We didn't see the Bloodborne spell used once. That was a Vitruvian game, more than a Surge game. Anyway, though, work will go up 4-5. Only one more game needed to take this series just to win with the Songhai against either the Abyssian or the Vayner. Both pretty decent matchups. I think Songhai does very well against Vayner, and as I've said, Abyssian, a creep Abyssian is probably not that good. It's probably not that good for the creep Abyssian because it is a very slow deck, and Songhai can really punish you with a lot of aggression. Against something like a Lilith that can generate a massive board and have all these must-kill threats, it's a lot harder for Songhai. But that aggression can be really, really good against Cassiva. That's how you beat Cassiva. It's one of the greediest decks in the game, and really can't deal with these aggressive decks too well. Okay, so we will see the Songhai coming out. I'm just loading in our opponent. It will be No Way It's Jay on Vayner. So just quickly find the game. So I do believe that this game was played out, and it was originally had to be replayed because of a bug or a disconnect or something like that. So this is the second iteration of the game. I'm not too sure at all how the game was going before the bug, but I don't believe it was too far on either side. Okay, so we will see the Reaver versus the Kara. We've seen both of these decks before, and definitely one of the better matchups. I think if you're Songhai, I mean, it doesn't really matter. You need to win against one of the factions. It doesn't matter who you verse first. But I think Vayner is probably the one you want to be. Want to be against first. Definitely want to have your confidence up for the first match. Okay, we will get into the Mulligan phase. Reaver going first. Looking pretty good with the 2-drop. Actually, probably pretty bad for this deck, as we talked about. Haven't really seen any 2-drops whatsoever, and a lot of 3-drops. So Reaver may have to miss her first turn once again. Oh, sorry, I just realized I did not have the second hand up. We will get that going. So yeah, as we can see, missing any 2-drops once again. Definitely a real weakness of this deck, and I would be curious if this deck is running any 2-drops whatsoever. We just haven't seen any drawn. We've seen 4 different 3-drops. Very, very interesting deck decision. And once again, no 2-drops, so allowing this more controlling deck to immediately seize the tempo. Okay, so still no play, just walking forward. I mean, he's always going to have a turn 2 play, because he has so many 3-drops, but very, very questionable. Maybe he's just been unlucky, maybe he hasn't drawn any 2-drops, but very, very interesting. Okay, so we can see a double 2-drop come out from Jay, which I will imagine will probably happen. Could take, the opportunity to develop a Sojourner, because it can be a little bit slower, but I think you definitely just want to drop both 2-drops, get as much power out on the board, denying that middle mana square, threatening an infiltrate. Very, very strong turn from Jay here. Okay, so we can see a variety of 3-drops. Only Jade Monk really stands out this turn. The only one that's, proactive and good by itself. Adjudicator not really doing much at all in this hand. Prismatic Illusionist is basically just a vanilla 2/3. So I imagine we'll see the Jade Monk come down, and I do like choosing to play it on the mana tile. Very likely that Jay can abuse both mana tiles with 2 minions already on board. Definitely need to worry about falling out behind in tempo, more at all. I do realise I am fumbling my words a little bit. It's been a very, very long session of casting and a pretty long weekend, I must say. But hopefully, we at least want to focus on our analysis for now. Okay, so we will see Jay has a couple options here. Could go Emerald Rejuvenator, something like trading in, and then Emerald Rejuvenator to get the Fusion effect. I think probably just Sojourner plus a 2-drop here is a little bit better. Interesting choosing not to attack with the 4/3, and I think just recognizing this matchup is very much about board control. He's not an aggressive deck. I think it might have been better to trade in first, see if you care about the 1 damage. If you don't get the 1 damage, maybe you can attack there. And I think if you're going to play like that, you probably would have been better off trading in the 4 damage. Looking like Jay's is going for a serious value-oriented game plan here. Not worrying about that 4 damage at all, or the potential even healing of his own general. Choosing to protect that Sojourner. Very, very interesting. But it's probably influenced pretty heavily by knowing his opponent's deck. Not a lot of early aggressive minions, more about that spell synergy, having time to create those combos and drawing a lot of cards. He wants to be able to always outvalue his opponent. Okay, so once again, we see a bit of an awkward turn for Oran. Can play a 3-drop plus that Bloodborne spell, which probably have to be Prismatic Illusionist. Adjudicator not really doing a lot. 4 Winds Magi can come down, but not using that effect at all this turn. I imagine we'll see 4 Winds Magi coming down. Okay, looks like he might go for the Prismatic Illusionist. I don't hate it. It's just a lot easier to deal with for No Waits Jay. Okay, good positioning here, but the Dancing Blades will potentially be able to kill this 2/3 for free. And choosing to play the Heartseeker here, very, very interesting. Choosing not to play it safe in the corner. Not too sure what to think about that one, actually. Very, very interesting. Not using this corner position at all. Not really sure what the reasoning is there, I've got to be honest. Jay choosing to be ultra safe with his health. He doesn't really seem to care about damaging his opponent at all, any kind of aggression. Choosing to give up that 4 attack once again. He is a bit low on cards. He does have that Sojourner, which can start to create some more resources for him, but it's already could be another turn away. Okay, for Oran, interesting hand here. He can start to create some spells, create some swing turns, but probably wants to save it for the next turn, I imagine. I wouldn't even mind an Adjudicator this turn. It is very, very greedy, but you can use Adjudicator the way it's meant to be used, which is for big swing turns. Don't use a lot of mana this turn, and then next turn you can go off with Firestar and Mana Vortex, Onyx Bear Seal, stuff like that. Also wouldn't fault him just for going for a 4 Winds Magi play, something like Phoenix Fire, Mana Vortex, that kind of thing. He may just go for Adjudicator, Onyx Bear Seal, which I don't hate. But with 2 cards that go off spells in hand, you know, you're really giving up that potential for this really strong swing turns, which I think Adjudicator is what it excels at. It's not about ramping, it's about storing some mana on one turn to really go off with these big effects on other turns. So we'll see the Adjudicator. We do see the Onyx Bear Seal come down. I imagine it will be on the 4/6. Okay, so we see the whole hand used. Interesting. And do we see the Onyx Bear Seal coming down on the... Okay, I might just pause it because our top card is getting a bit further ahead. Choosing to play on the Onyx Bear Seal, and you know, this is a play I quite like. Really trying to starve Jay of these resources here. Only 3 cards in hand. We can see they're not particularly great cards. Well, still 4 cards in hand for Oran, who can potentially draw more cards. You know, with stuff like Heaven's Eclipse, and has particularly high value cards in his hand. So, interesting plan, really trying to stop card draw, stop Jay from seriously outvaluing, and obviously the more cards that Kara has in hand, it gets a lot stronger because you know, it's able to use that Bloodborne spell on a lot more minions. So, very interesting line of play here. Really interesting decision that Oran's decided to go for a value game plan, realizing he's not going to be able to get that early aggression to stop his opponent's threats. And that Bloodborne spell will start to generate a lot of value if he can get in a position to play it safely. And Kara's is, you know, a lot less consistent in always creating value. Mainly buff 1 or 2 minions. Now we do see Jay with an Emerald Rejuvenate and a Dispel. I imagine we might see the Dispel gotten rid of. I don't think he wants to be dispelling a lot of the threats. You know, maybe he just decides to keep it. I definitely think you're replacing 1 card in this hand, just because it's very low impact. I definitely prefer to replace the spell, I think. Well, maybe not actually. You have that Bloodborne spell. Very interesting. He chose to do nothing. Unless that was a disconnect. It might have been a disconnect. Yes, I think that was a disconnect, unfortunately. So, yeah, interesting game. I think Jay was in a pretty good position. So, unfortunately, that was the end of the series. We saw a 6-4 win for Jay. Sorry, for Work. Which is, it's really unfortunate for me as a Memestorm player, but unfortunate just to end the series on a disconnect. It was very close. But, you know, a well-deserved win to Work. They came back really strong. Definitely that last game could have gone either way. Jay was, you know, ahead on board, but, you know, his hand could have, you know, he could have fizzled out if he kept drawing a lot of low-cost minions. I think I probably still would have given a slight edge to Jay, but definitely a very interesting game we had going on. Unfortunately, we won't get to see the end of. So anyway, guys, that will be the end of the video. It was very long, 2 hours. I do apologize for the length. Unfortunately, nothing I can do about it. We are casting a best of 11. We went to 10 games. I also do apologizing. I'm a bit tired, having to cast both sides of the game, organizing this all. So I apologize for times my commentary, you know, was a little bit mumbly as I'm trying to figure out all this technical side of things. OBS hasn't been very good for me lately. So, yeah, a lot of things going against us, but I'm glad I could bring out this commentary for you guys. I hope you guys enjoy it, and if you want to see more of this kind of thing, please do let me know. Any feedback for my casting is very important to me because I am trying to work on it, trying to do more tournaments and that kind of thing. If you want to see more gameplay videos, definitely more coming out very soon. Definitely going to try and work on a lot more variety of decks for you guys. Anyway, guys, I'll see you next time. Thanks a lot.